the very first thing that Alex and I want to talk about is why we believe so strongly in building out things outside of your day job. These are things that you are substantially responsible for. It's not like a team of 10 or 20 people who you're contributing one screen or one widget. We're talking about apps or projects that you are the primary author of, or like a very, very small team. And there are so many benefits to this. And I just want to reiterate those in this slide, just so we can kind of understand or frame the discussion about, why this is so important. And then I think the tactics, which is the majority of time today, the tactics will become much more meaningful once you understand, why we are so bullish on this. So first off, I think that if you have personal projects that actually get users, in my mind, that is as good as work experience, and in some ways even better, right? If you think about what is a job of engineer, we've said this before. The job of engineer is to create business value for the company that they're employed at, right? And so if you are on your own able to build an Android app, iOS app, web app, something which actually has hundreds or thousands of users, you are clearly, undeniably creating value for that set of people, right? And that really is business value. So you've basically proven without a doubt that you can make something of value writing code. And actually, the reason I say that it might even be more valuable than work experience is that there's a lot of other things that go into building a usable and popular experience beyond just writing code. Like we're going to talk about things like how do you name your app, things like community management, replying to feedback and engaging with the audience that you build up, creating logo, like basic things like that. You're actually going to become a much more holistic engineer rather than the one who just codes on the side. And in my mind, that makes you even more valuable than just someone who is able to like hack some code together. So that's the big number one, is that if you're struggling for work experience, the number one thing that Alex and I recommend is create your own work experience. And the way you do that is just build things that you care about, make it for free, and like try to get people to use what you've built. The other thing, which is very often overlooked, is that building stuff is by far, in our opinion, the best way to actually learn stuff, right? So we've talked about this before as well, and we'll talk about it again in 2 weeks with the dedicated session about learning. But compared to watching a tutorial on YouTube or reading a blog or just reading code, like reading documentation, actually building stuff where you take off the training wheels and you build a whole experience, that is the best learning you can do. Learning by doing, right? Because if you just watch a tutorial, which I think a lot of people do, and I think there are benefits to tutorial watching. I mean, I make tutorials, so clearly I think that they're valuable, but that's not enough, right? Things like reading the documentation, debugging your code, figuring out how something really works behind the scenes, you're not going to get that by watching a YouTuber or some blog post like walk through the code, right? The real learning will happen when you actually try and break the code you wrote or add a new feature and you try and figure out, okay, why doesn't this work the way I expect? So really, I mean, this is just how to supercharge your learning. This is really what you should be doing if you are not getting that at your day job. The other thing, which is going to become very obvious in the next few slides, is that building stuff on your own and actually putting it out there in the world, it has a potential to really meaningfully help others, right? And that's one of the things that you don't really quite understand it until you get that first 5-star review on an app that you published, where someone says, hey, like I use this app, I had this need, and this solved my problem. Like it feels so good, right? Like that impact, that ability to help others, just pretty amazing. And the fact that you can do that now as a single developer, as an indie developer, is pretty amazing, right? Like that's one trend that Alex and I also think about a lot, is that when we started out, like in high school, college, in the mid 2000s or late 2000s, like 2009, 2010, it was actually very, very hard to put up a website on your own. It was very, very hard to build an Android app, right? These are the early days of mobile app development. But now, fast forward 10 years, it's so much easier. Literally in one weekend, any of the people here, I guarantee that if you are persistent, in one weekend, you would be able to publish an app. I guarantee it. It's so easy now. And so the ability for you to create something of value, you don't need to be part of a huge company. You don't need to be part of a huge team. You just do it on your own. And that's something that trend will continue. And as a result of that continuing, what's going to happen is in 5 or 10 years, if you have not built out a project on your own, you're going to be left behind. You are not going to be able to find a job unless you have built some software on your own, which helps people. The other benefit of always building personal projects, always hacking on things on the side, is that it unlocks career paths. So one thing I talk about a lot is put yourself in a position to get lucky. So if you go out and you build a project and you publish it, I really feel like that's one of the best ways to get lucky, right? So pick a project which you care about. Like, for example, in the Slack community that Alex and I have, Tech Career Growth, there's one person who made a website which was like a board game helper. Like there was I forget the name of the board game, Alex. I'm not sure if you remember it. It was like Citadel or something. But it was like this really clean application which helped you play the board game more effectively. And that's the kind of thing where like now other people who play that board game, which is a small but dedicated group of people, a community, they are now all going to be really into that game, and you're going to meet a lot of really cool people that way. That's kind of more of like a hobbyist thing. But it's really cool to meet those people. But in general, like the more you put yourself out there, the more you're able to build things and talk about things that are interesting to you. Then people who have jobs that are really interesting, or potential mentors, people you can network with, they will all of a sudden start to reach out to you. And then that'll just open up so many opportunities for you, not only in terms of finding another job or finding a side hustle, but all these things will open up. And Alex and I are proof of that, where we've just seen amazing things happen when we actually put ourselves out there. And then finally, this is kind of maybe the most obvious one, is that it is fun and fulfilling, right? Like it's just so fun, in my opinion, to be able to sit in front of your computer, tap on the keyboard a little bit, and you're actually, not only are you learning, but you're actually have the potential to help many people in the world, right? Like it's kind of mind blowing that we're able to get paid for this career path. So I just feel like it's a huge privilege that we're able to do this. We live in a time where this is possible. And I think that this is going to become more and more the expectation going forward. And I think one thing I want to call out here is that some people, I think, start building out projects because they have this really big, important goal, right? I want to get 1 million users on this app. I want to be able to make a bunch of money. And that's okay. I think it's actually good to have big goals. But I think that the most important part of having a goal is actually pursuing that goal, right? That's really where I think you're going to become a better software engineer. You're going to become a better person in terms of like getting feedback, iterating, and this idea of continuous improvement. So if you're able to decouple the result from the process, like enjoy the journey, not the destination, I really think that you're going to have a ton of fun building out this stuff. And then regardless of whether you actually achieve your milestone of how many users you want or how much money you want to make, you're going to become a much better person in the pursuit of that goal. Alex, anything to add here?
Yeah, this is something I forgot to add when I wrote this slide. But something that's really great about kind of building personal software projects is that it's really conducive to what you're trying to do. And this is why I find it kind of sad that side projects are kind of, frankly, unappreciated. Because the point of a software engineer is to build software products, right? And this is what building side projects is. It's more or less the purest form of doing that. So one way to look at this is that it's a very kind of synergistic and non-parasitic activity, because the work you do building side projects isn't just like some standalone thing that gets lost when you actually get a job, because it translates over. Because like if you build software projects on the side and write code that tries to try to evolve to real products, once you join a company, you're going to be doing the exact same thing. And an example of a parasitic activity is actually interview prep, in particular data structures and algorithms. You do not use data structures and algorithms on your day job. It's just this really annoying thing that you spend months upon months learning, and then you pass the interview. And then as soon as you pass the interview, you just toss it all out because you do not apply to your day job. So that's a very parasitic activity, right? It just exists to take up your time. But software projects are not this way. And I have very clear proof, again, myself. A lot of this session is anchored on my personal experience. So as I described in my intro, I transitioned from a full stack / backend engineer to an Android engineer. And the reason I was able to get a job as an Android lead at Course Hero is because of my side projects. Android lead obviously is like, like a serious role. They require 3+ years of experience in the job posting. But I was able to get that job because at the point of me applying, I had already built 2 or 3 apps that already had more than 10,000 users. So that was able to get my foot in the door. And then I was able to impress the CTO on the interview and get the job. And I remember when I started the job at Course Hero, was having so much fun because they were like, well, we hire you to build an Android app from scratch. And then I was like, cool, I've spent, the past 2.5 years building Android apps from scratch for fun. And it was so helpful, the work, my side project experience, to the point where I was literally copy pasting code from my personal apps into the production code base for Course Hero. Like I remember we needed Facebook login for the Course Hero app V1. I had built Facebook login before in a side project. I literally went to my own GitHub and copy pasted the code into my work. And the same thing for rendering a list of items with pagination, very common pattern when it comes to content apps, which Course Hero is. I had built a feed with infinite pagination, infinite scrolling before. So I literally just copy pasted that code into the Course Hero production app as I was starting my job in the first few months of me working at Course Hero. And I think this is such an amazing benefit because it also helps your job, right? It essentially greatly reduces the chances of you underperforming, at a new job. And I know a lot of people in the community worry about this. They're like, after I get the job, how do I prevent myself from going underwater? Like, how do I prevent myself from not being able to keep up and, getting a bad performance review? My answer, just build side projects, like actually try to build, high quality production code before landing your job. And that's just going to, it's going to give you this huge buffer that you can really tap into once you start.